Welcome to another edition of A Voice to the Gentile Church. I'm Jim Wingerter. Next to me is Pastor Roger Diaz. Next to him is Frank Ritz. Dolores is on assignment. So, Pastor, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that the president, and it's not restricted to Donald Trump, but previous presidents that we've known are notoriously bad at sharing with the public why they're doing what they're doing. So, why exactly, with regard to Iran, is Trump doing what he's doing?
So I think the question is this war justified, right?
Right.
Because there's a lot of pushback. I mean,
right.
Before long, in the next couple of days, he's going to look for Congress to approve another war act against Iran.
Right.
And more than likely, the Democrats are going to shoot it down. So the argument is that the war is not totally justifiable. But, you know, I'm amazed by that statement, right? Because it was Ronald Reagan who first began to say, we cannot allow Iran to attain a nuclear weapon.
Right, back when nobody knew who Iran was.
When you were a kid, right, in 1979, you know, Jimmy Carter did what he did. Mm-hmm. Ronald Reagan came out and one of his platforms, one of his talking points during the election was what we did, what we allowed Iran to become, or what Iran can become, can never be allowed. Everyone knew that Iran was looking for nuclear weapons. This is 1982.
Yeah, yes.
So Ronald Reagan understood the threat of Iran, and he said, we've got to do something about it. Did he ever do anything about it? No.
No.
And then Bush Sr., he made the same declarations that Iran should not be allowed a nuclear weapon. Iran must be contained, I think is what he said. Did he do anything about it?
He did not.
What about Bill? Old wild slick Billy?
They all spoke well.
No, well, Bill was really Bill Clinton was really strong on Iran. I mean, he was saying things. He was making declarations about how dangerous Iran was and never to have a nuclear weapon. And he said things like, should Iran ever have a nuclear weapon, they will certainly use it against Israel, against the West, and so on. Did he do anything about it? What about Obama?
He gave him $1 billion.
Right. Well, Obama gave them more than $1 billion.
Yeah.
Obama had rhetoric, but he had no action.
Right.
And then, of course, we know Sleepy Joe Biden. He had the same rhetoric. What did he do? He gave them money.
Right.
So here we have a president who isn't engaging in much rhetoric. He does, but he's action. He's taken action. So the question is Iran really a threat against Israel? Even the Arab countries, are they really threatened by Iran's ambitions to have a nuclear weapon? What about Europe? What about the West? We already know that they have the capacity to send missiles to Europe. Iran has stated clearly, no ambiguity at all, that they should have a nuclear weapon.
Right.
Of course, every time it comes up in the UN and other places, they say, no, we just want power. We just want nuclear power, which is a lie because they've already stated that they should have nuclear weapons.
Right.
They have 60% uranium, graded uranium. What's that? 60% uranium grade, refined uranium. Uranium grade, whatever.
Right.
And so 90% is kind of that threshold where you're in a real dangerous place.
Right, right.
I mean, you're able to put out weapons quickly. So they're 60% now, and they're pushing towards 90%. Even now, they have, the administration is saying that they have thousands of pounds of uranium stashed away. So when we look at what they've been doing in the last couple of months, attacking Arab countries, Sunni Muslim countries, the UAE, what's it? My mind's
United
working.
Arab Emirates.
The Emirates.
UAE.
Right. UAE, and then even sending missiles into Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
When you look at that, and you say, okay, how many missiles did they lob into Israel? Thousands.
Yeah.
If they had a nuclear weapon, would they have used it? They even sent missiles into Turkey, which is technically Europe.
Yes,
So
yes, right.
if they had nuclear weapons, they would certainly use it. So I think this war is more than justified. It's so political that Europe and Democrats in this country are pressing against it.
Well,
But-
everybody's complaining they're paying a lot for gas.
Well, yeah.
And I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, but I'm glad to pay a little more at the pumps in order for a real problem in the world to be addressed.
Absolutely. So the question is, Iran. Is Iran a legitimate threat? Is the war justified? From my perspective, and from the perspective of everyone who sees this in proper light, sure it is.
Yes.
In fact, I would say that this country should be more aggressive in forming alliances with other countries just to completely end the war
Yeah.
through regime change.
Right. Yes.
When this country and Australia and other Western countries went after Saddam Hussein for regime change back in the early 1990s, I think you were engaged in that war. Is that right? Or
No, that was a little bit
yeah.
earlier than me, yes.
Yeah. So back in the early 90s, Desert Storm, I think, is what the war
My
was
brother
called.
was, though.
Right.
Was it Desert Storm?
Desert
Yes.
Shield. Operation Desert Shield.
Okay. All right. So back then, they were seeking regime change. I wasn't so keen about regime change at that time. I'm not a warmongering person.
Right.
But with Iran, I am absolutely convinced that there needs to be regime change because their declarations and their pushing towards nuclear weapons has been clearly noted. And so why would you even allow that regime to go on? So I think the war is justifiable.
Yeah.
And we'll see how Congress reacts to that. So, disclosure mania and hysteria.
I think most of the public is fully unaware that the people of Iran, who are mostly descendants of Persia,
They're Persians, right?
were
Medo-Persians.
were
yeah.
not Islamic.
Originally, right.
And when this government came to power in the early 1980s, they were kind of forced to become
Well,
an Islamic state. But
many
they
of-
were what is it?
Zoroastrians.
Zoroastrian.
They were not, the population before, let's say in the 1940s, the population was divided. You had maybe 25% Zoroastrians, you had a lot of Christians, you had a lot of Jews.
Yes, right.
And you
yes.
had a lot of Sunni Muslims.
There's still a large Jewish population there, isn't there?
No, they've been pushed out.
They've
Yeah,
okay.
they've been pushed out. Of course, the Jews were there since the days of Nebuchadnezzar, right?
Yes, right.
And, 586 BC. But so the point is, we have this incredible situation now where we have a president who's willing to push back,
Right.
and I think the country should just let him do it.
Yes.
So let's talk about disclosure now. So, oh boy, this is
Oh.
going to be yeah.
The word
So
of the day is
have you ever heard
disclosure.
of disclosure, Frank?
I
You've heard
have.
it? Yeah.
I have. I apologize for drawing us back one more time, but did you know, I just have a statistic here.
Yeah.
So from April 2021 to December 2024, about a 3.5 year period, Iran has been able to make 230 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. And then from December 24 to June 25, in a half a year, Iran doubled its stock of 60% to 440 kilograms, which, if you do the math, that allows them to make about 9 to 12 atomic bombs in 1 month.
Yep. In a
Just
very
wanted
short
to add
space
that,
of time.
sorry.
If
How
they
many
were
do
to-
they need? Right.
If they were to enrich to 90%, they would be able to produce bombs much quicker. So
Anyway, sorry about
we
that,
have
but
to we
yes,
have to take them seriously. So the whole thing of disclosure, I've brought this up before and discussed it before, but why is it relevant now? Well, apparently, and this is not apparent anymore. I've spent a few hours digging into it to verify this.
Okay.
A certain congressman, very notable congressman by the name of Eric Burlinson, and he's from Missouri, is that right? Missouri?
He is from the 20th Senatorial District in Missouri.
So he's quite a powerful congressman, a conservative Christian, very Christian. He and some other government types, they put together 3 or 4 conventions of pastors around the country. They were supposed to be secret meetings. And at these meetings, this congressman and the other government officials basically said to these pastors, this convention of pastors, that they must act quickly to prepare their congregations for what was coming. And what was coming is disclosure. And that the U.S. government, together with other governments around the world, involved in the United Nations as well, is going to spill the beans on, quote-unquote, UAEs, right? Used to be called UFOs.
Right.
And the essence of the disclosure is that these crafts that have been seen and they've captured, apparently, they have actual crafts, are not necessarily from another planet, but they're from different dimensions. So they're interdimensional objects, being operated by interdimensional entities, quote unquote aliens, right?
Right.
So
that's the disclosure.
But it's more than that.
Okay.
The extent of the disclosure. Now, I've listened to 2 pastors so far, actually 3 pastors, and Perry Stone, who is really an evangelist. I've listened to 4 people now discuss this. One of those people were at one of those meetings. And the real concern coming from this congressman and from the government that convened these meetings is that they are preparing to tell the world that the Bible and effectively all religion is a construct to keep humanity in a place of being controlled. And that there's actually no God, and that Jesus was not really the Son of God. And all of this is just, again, a construct to keep humanity at peace. And that the time has come to put out this information, and that humanity must be ready for it. So where does this come from, right? So this is basically the fruit of Eric von Daniken.
Yeah.
Eric von Daniken, a Jesuit, I think he was a Swiss. Yeah, I think he was Swiss, a Swiss Jesuit who in the 1960s wrote a book called Chariots of the Gods, and then he followed up with Gold of the Gods, and then about 15 other books. And he's still alive, going around the world doing conventions. His theory that he postulated was that who we know as God and what we know as biblical narratives are actually pointing to these interdimensional entities and their interaction with us. So von Daniken, of course, cited, the story of Jehu and Elisha the prophet, when Elisha said, "Behold the chariots of Israel," and Jehu opened his eyes and he saw thousands of chariots.
Chariots, right.
And then, of course, Ezekiel chapter 1, a ring within a ring and eyes and so on. So you think, okay, that's really fluky, and from the standpoint of a Christian, it's laughable. But according to these pastors, there's a genuine concern coming from D.C., from this congressman and other people, that when this comes out, the world will fall into a state of panic and chaos. Because apparently the information they have is so revealing and so compelling. So that's what disclosure is. Again, if pastors were not being convened to prepare their congregation, in order to prepare their congregation for what's coming, I wouldn't talk about this. But it's all over the internet. And it's real. It's real. I'm a former von Danikite. I believed everything he said. I read, I think, 4 of his books. I absolutely believed it. In 1989, I came to the end of it. 2 years later, I was born again. But in 1989, the Word of God was strong in me. It was as if he pinned me in a corner and he said, "It's me or him." You know, I felt that strongly because for 4 years before that, since '86, I was reading the Bible. I was beginning to believe, but I was still holding on to my von Danikite, ideologies to some extent. So I was sort of, grappling with it. And then around 1989, 1990, the Spirit of God said to me, "It's von Daniken or me. You can't have them both." So I made a very easy decision to dump von Daniken.
Good that it was an easy decision.
But Eric von Daniken was more than just a author and a scientist, a Jesuit. To me, he was like an idol.
Yeah.
to me. And it took me all of about 5 seconds to dump him. And the dump was complete.
Okay.
The dump was complete.
But
because,
the Lord prepared you for that moment, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because what I have now in terms of relationship with God, knowing him, hearing his voice, having fellowship with him,
right,
is real.
Yes.
Never could I challenge that. Nothing can challenge what I have with
Right,
God right now.
right.
So, yeah, what these pastors are saying is that many Christians are going to be strongly challenged
Yes.
over this whole thing. So, it's supposed to happen by the end of 26. We'll see. What do you think, Frank?
I found some really interesting stuff. I just seem to be Googling because you said it's all over the internet. So
Yeah, what did you see on the
So
internet?
first thing, you were talking about UAEs. UAPs is another acronym, unidentified anomalous phenomenon.
Phenomena, yeah.
And then
UAPs.
did you know that Steven Spielberg is actually releasing a movie? And it's going to be
Really?
released in June. And it's
about
called
disclosure?
It's called Disclosure
I'm
Day.
not surprised.
It's called Disclosure Day. It's
I'm not
supposed to be
surprised,
released.
yeah.
I'm not going to give him a plug, but it's in June of 26.
Yeah.
Featuring gray-like aliens and massive triangle UFOs.
Von Daniken, Steven Spielberg.
Steven Spielberg.
You know, that's
From ET
amazing
to
because
that.
he hasn't done anything in decades. All of
No.
a sudden, he's coming out. And it's probably going to be a blockbuster.
Da 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 da.
A follow-up on E.T., I guess.
ET Part 2.
But this is dangerous. It's dangerous because I know the stronghold of that ideology. I know how demonic it is. I know how deceptive it is. I've experienced it. God delivered me from it. So, yeah, this is going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing because many Christians are going to be challenged. They shouldn't be, but they're going to be challenged.
Right.
Anyway, so we have a little bit of a question here. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And the question is, with so many pseudo-conservatives crushing Israel today, is it possible that we will see Jew hatred on the level of Nazi Germany in the near future?
Near future, perhaps. We don't know. But in the future, for sure, we'll see it. I think it would be on the level of Nazi Germany. I think we're looking at we're going towards a global Kristallnacht.
Yeah.
Kristallnacht. You know what Kristallnacht is?
Yes.
The Night of Broken Glass, I think is what it means, yep. The Night of Broken Glass. That happened, and I have the date here, November 9th and the 10th of 1938. This was the beginning of the Nazi terror. Following this, there was about maybe 7 years or so of absolute horror upon the Jewish people in Europe. That's roughly the 7-year period of Jacob's trouble, as far as I'm concerned. So it began with Kristallnacht. And what was Kristallnacht about? Well, you know the story. Kristallnacht is about the initiation of persecution, pogroms, on a scale that had not existed since the time of the Inquisitions. And young German men and even women, instigated by the SS, by the Nazi SS, went out and started breaking the pane glasses of Jewish businesses throughout Europe.
A giant program.
And it was all over, not Europe, Germany. It was all over Germany.
Germany.
Berlin and other parts of Germany. So it was a turning point for the
Yes.
Jewish people in Germany and in Europe, because from that moment on, the pogroms became almost institutionalized, government institutionalized.
Right.
And people started being carried off to these concentration camps, and everything went completely devastated from that point on. So I think we're headed towards something like a global Kristallnacht, which is an awful, awful thing to see. It's a dreadful thing to even consider that something like that can actually happen again. But we're seeing the makings of it, right? So I sent out a video, Frank, of something that occurred in Manhattan, I think a couple of days ago, where a group of, Palestinian protesters, or protesters against Israel, supporting Palestine.
Right. Outside of a synagogue.
Yeah, major
67th
synagogue.
Street near Park Avenue,
So a major,
which is Midtown Manhattan.
Midtown Manhattan. They were pushing on the barricade to get in. They had barricades up to keep the protesters at bay, but they actually pushed through.
This has never happened in New York before, and there's no way it's not just Mamdani.
So clearly, what do you think? They're pushing through the barricades. What were they planning to do?
Oh, there's no doubt that they were going to obviously go in there with the intent to harm.
Yeah.
There's no doubt at all.
At least destroy the building.
Yeah.
Destroy the building.
Absolutely.
So this is happening more and more. It's more prevalent in this country, and you would think for sure that would not have been the case, but it's happening more and more here. It's happening in Europe a lot, other parts of the world. Of course, we know what just happened in Australia a few months ago. So we're seeing a build-up here, and it's an alarming situation. And so the question is, could we get to where there can be something like a global crystal knock? And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
I think the answer is yes.
Frightening.
I see massive pogroms in our future, not just in Europe, but also in this country. I can't help but see it. Anti-Semitism is on the rise, and when you think about the word anti-Semitism, how did the word anti-Semitism come into existence? Well, in the 1800s, early 1900s, in Europe, the only Semitic people that were in Europe were Jews.
Right, okay.
So hatred of Jews became known as anti-Semitism. Well, that's not the case now, because you have hordes of Semite people in Europe that are not Jewish.
Right.
So even in this country, right? You think the word anti-Semitism is relevant in this country, but you have to consider it. There are hordes of Semite people in this country that are not Jewish, and they all hate Israel. So I think it's more relevant to say anti-Israel.
Yes.
I say anti-Israelism,
Yes.
anti-Zionism. I think is more relevant because you're more pointed, you're more focused, you're targeted. You're not saying anti-Semitism, which can be a broad statement
Very
today.
broad, right.
Again, in the early 1900s, anti-Semitism could have only meant, animosity, hatred towards the Jews. Today it's different.
Right.
You got to be more focused. It's against Israel. It's against the Jewish people. It's against Zion. Anti-Zionism is anti-Israelism, is anti-Jewishism. And I say isms, but so you see my point. So anti-Israel sentiment is growing rapidly in our media. How's that even possible? 4 years ago we had personalities, media personalities, social media personalities, who were conservative or considered to be conservative. They're framed to be conservatives, but now they're horribly anti-Israel. I'm talking about, of course, Theo Vaughn and Candace Owen and Tucker Carlson.
Yes.
And they're saying horrible things, and they're gaining traction. How is that even possible? What has happened? What has happened in the universe, in the spiritual sphere that has brought this on? Something happened. I think I know what it is, but what do you guys think? What happened that all of a sudden you might say, well, it's the war. October 7th created the catalyst for people to really begin to come against Israel. But is that really what it is? Or is it spiritual? I think it's spiritual.
I mean, it has to be spiritual.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about the spirit of Amalek, right? So when you talk about the spirit of Amalek, a lot of people get really upset. What is that? We don't know what Amalek is. Well, you're not biblical. And so if you don't have a ground in the Bible, you're not going to understand who Amalek is and what the spirit of Amalek is. But clearly, the spirit of Amalek is rampant. It's rampaging. I'll use another phrase. It's running amok. And it's gaining momentum, and it's horrifying. So what's the end of Amalek, Jim? Amalek is a real, spiritual demographic. It's not a natural demographic. There's not a natural people that we can identify as Amalek. It's a spiritual movement.
Right.
So the end of Amalek, according to the Bible, is destruction, right?
Right.
So God said it himself. What did God say? You know it in Exodus chapter 17. What did God say?
Oh, yeah.
I will make war.
I will make war against Amalek from generation to generation.
And in the Hebrew, it literally says...
Because he's extended his hand against the God of Israel.
He is pushed against my authority.
Right.
And God said, because
he's put
of
his
that,
hand on my throne is literally
yeah.
what it says.
So God says, because of that, he's going to make war with Amalek from generation to generation. Now, who's going to win that war? God's making war with the spirit.
Well, there's a
Who's
lot
gonna
of
win
people
that
that
war?
don't know the answer to that question.
So Amalek, in terms of the spiritual demographic, it's a spirit, it's a movement that causes people to just almost seemingly without justification, real justification, come against the people of Israel, come against the Jewish people, and not just come against them, but murderously,
Yes.
with evil intent, come
Right.
against the people of
Right.
Israel. That's one of the identifiers of Amalek. If you see something like that happening, it is certainly the spirit of Amalek. Because the story goes back to Exodus chapter 17, right? So maybe, Frank, you can tell us about the story. How did Amalek become a superstar in the Bible? Not really a superstar, but
Just
notable in
known,
the
yeah,
Bible.
Notable.
How did that happen?
Well, it was right after, if I'm not mistaken, it was right after the Israelites were on their way out of Egypt.
Yeah.
And
right.
the
They had gone to Horeb.
Amalekites started attacking the Weakers and those
Came from
children
roughly
and the
200,
old
2
people.
million people that may have left Egypt, right? The women and the children.
Right.
You know, so there were definitely deceptive tactics right there from behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Picking on the weaker ones.
So Israel had grumbled against God at Meribah and at Horeb, and Moses struck the rock, gave them water. This incredible thing happened, where Israel's beginning to say, wow, God didn't only deliver us from Egypt, part of the sea, he brought water from a rock.
Right. He's
So-
keeping us.
Right. And
Right.
so from Horeb, they started going north, east to get around the mountain to get to Sinai. And that's when Amalek attacked. Amalek came against Israel before they got to Sinai, before they would be able to establish the covenant. God will establish the covenant with them. So God took that personally.
Yes. Very
And
personally.
what's worse is that they went after the stragglers, the women and the children and the weak and infirm. Again, God took this very, very personally. It was a deep, deep offense to God. And so Moses went up on the mountain with Aaron and Hur, and he held up the staff of God. Whenever the staff was held up, Amalek was defeated. Whenever his arms grew weary, the staff was let down, Amalek would prevail. So we know from that narrative that the battle is spiritual.
Yes.
It's not a
right.
natural battle. We know from the very beginning it's a very spiritual battle. And how does God people prevail against Amalek? By lifting up God's power, by interceding, by prayer. Short of that, Amalek is going to prevail. And that's what we see in that whole story.
Right.
So it seems like Amalek is prevailing, and probably because God's people are not praying.
Wow.
God's people need to intercede, need to lift up the staff of God, and
Yeah,
Amalek will be
that's true.
defeated. Jesus said, "When the Son of Man comes, will he find faith in the world?"
Yeah.
And he was referring to people praying.
Right.
So we have to
Believing
pray,
that he hears our prayers and intervenes.
praying against the evil.
Right.
Amalek is what it's all about. So people like Theo Vaughn and others, when they hear Amalek, they become infuriated. I mean, I remember them saying, "Oh, I don't want to hear about this Amalek. It was invented by Israel." Bibi Netanyahu said this is about Amalek, and we're really not
Right.
happy with that.
Right.
So if God said he's making war with Amalek, and someone like a rabbi or a prime minister or myself mentioned God's disdain towards Amalek, and you lose your mind, what spirit is governing you?
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
Yeah, you got to come to Amalek. yeah.
Upset that the true identity has
It's
been
being revealed.
Revealed.
Yeah. So these people, I think, are completely given over to the spirit of Amalek.
Sure. Right.
That may sound, corny or something, but it's from the standpoint of the Bible, it is absolutely normative for people to be pulled into that spirit. We know the story of Haman, right? Haman was
Yes.
an Agagite, an Amalekite. His hatred for Israel, for Mordecai, was deep, was visceral, was intense, right?
Yes.
That's Amalek.
Yes.
So I listened to a debate yesterday, and they were, 20 people were debating one Israeli, and one person brought up the book of Esther. How in the book of Esther, the Jews went out and did genocide. And
Okay.
they challenged the Israeli to show how even in the Bible they were people that will inflict genocide. You know the story of
Yes, yes.
Mordecai
Sure.
and Esther and
Right.
and how they were commissioned
Well,
to
the
go out.
command in Exodus was to commit genocide.
Well, the king
It doesn't use that terminology,
Well,
but
Ahasuerus, the husband of Hadassah, Xerxes, ordained
Yes.
that they should go out and take revenge.
Right.
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 So the people who debated in that panel that I looked at yesterday, that debate I looked at yesterday, were actually using the story in the Bible to say that the Jewish people are somehow inherently prone to
Genocidal.
to murder,
Yeah.
to mass murder.
right.
Now, to me, that's absolutely amazing, right?
Right.
That's like the Pope saying no leader should ever instigate war. Well, Xerxes, he went more than instigate a war. He initiated that Mordecai and the Jewish people in his kingdom will destroy the Amalekites. And he did. That's the story of the Bible.
Right.
From the standpoint of the book of Esther, that's victory.
Yes.
That's victory, good over evil, right?
right.
From the standpoint of these people, that's the evidence that they are a people that are committedly evil. Synagogue
Yeah.
of Satan.
Right.
You know, part of this disclosure thing, and this is going to blow your mind, and you will see it when the disclosure comes out. Part of the disclosure is that Israel is an alien nation. Sounds crazy? Yeah. That's on the internet. Look it up.
Wow.
Part of the ideology that's out there is that the people of Israel are alien to earth. And that they're, this is crazy what they're saying, and they're somehow, their genes have been crossed with aliens. That's what they're saying, Israel. So you can understand the craziness that's coming down the pike with this disclosure stuff. So if that comes out and you're going to see that, yep, there are people that believe that stuff, and they're the ones who are pushing disclosure. I'm not sure why Steven Spielberg would want to promote that, but
He's Jewish.
so you can see how the world can develop more hatred, more animosity towards the Jewish people if the narrative is that they are somehow in cahoots with the aliens. It's crazy, but crazy people that believe in this. It's just bizarre. So we live in this incredibly crazy world where podcasters are gaining traction and momentum and putting out these incredible, blood libels. The propaganda is insane. Like Tucker Carlson saying Christians are disappearing in Israel. That's a blood libel if I've ever, So what's the ancient blood libel? You know what the ancient blood libel is? That the Jewish people at Pesach would kidnap a Gentile child
Oh, right.
and, offer it up, sacrifice it, goodness, take its blood and mix it into the matzah. It's a blood libel. Nothing like that ever happened. It's just propaganda. It's Amalek. Now here you have Tucker Carlson saying something like this, that Christians are disappearing in Israel. The inference is that they're being killed. Tucker Carlson. And of course, Candace Owen, and this is a direct quote from Candace Owen, while there is an Israel, there will be no peace. What's she saying? That Israel needs to no longer exist
Right.
if we want
right.
peace.
Right. They're the impediment to
Right. And from the
the one
standpoint
world
of
government.
and from the standpoint of disclosure, they are aliens. They're the problem with humanity. It's their genes that's infecting us. I've read all this stuff on the internet. And you say, well, that's just fringe stuff. Yeah, but so is disclosure. That's going to come out
Right.
before 26.
Yeah.
Is ended. Amazing. And then this kid, Theo Vaughn, saying that the Jewish nation, Israel, is a satanic regime, and that they are the synagogue of Satan. It's
Well,
a shame.
he's just a neo-Nazi.
Well, it's a shame I have to defend this, and you have
Right.
others as well, right? Nick Fuentes. There's a whole army of people like that, and what's heartbreaking is that they're gaining momentum. This revival of young Americans coming to faith, this evangelical revival that's happening right now, people 30 and under. A lot of them are being interviewed. Well, a lot of interviews are happening and surveys. And one survey said 98% of these kids that are in this revival movement are anti-Israel, not supporters of Israel. 98%. What's happening? Well, what's happening is Theo Vaughn, Candace Owen, Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, Alex Jones, and all these people are prevailing. They are prevailing. So, Synagogue of Satan. What do you think about that? You ever ponder that, Frank? Of course, that's taken from Revelation chapter 2.
Right.
Jesus made reference to the synagogue of Satan. You ever? And so they say, well, then the Jewish people, based on that statement, all of Israel, demonic. Again, according to Theo Vaughn, a satanic nation. What do you think about that? How would you come back? How would you rebuttal that?
My first thought's truth, but the problem is that, you got to have a foundation upon which everybody agrees. And so the downside is that if you're cherry picking the Bible and you're trying to actually utilize the Bible against rhetoric like that, the problem is that it could work against you, right? So that's my first thought. But I think probably just what we're doing right now, honestly, trying to educate from the other way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, there's so many instances that we find, even in the book of Acts, and we'll talk about Acts chapter 15 here in a moment, that illustrates that synagogues are not of the devil.
Right.
Now,
we
could
know
there,
that.
could there
We
be
know
a
that.
synagogue that's satanic? Could there have been? Of course.
Yeah.
What about Christianity? Could there be a church?
I'm sure.
There's a church of Satan.
Sure.
You say, well, they're not Christians, but not from their points of view. From their points of view, they are Christians. Yeah. They just worship Satan. So in Acts chapter 15, you know the account. The huge council, schism,
Right. Right.
Super legalistic Jewish believers saying that the Gentiles that are coming in should be ritualistically converted, circumcised, clean, unclean, everything. And they had a huge debate, and then James said, well, no, not really. Let's just make sure that they abstain from roadkill, things strangled, fornication, idolatry, and blood. Let's make sure they stay away from those things. And then he says something that's incredible. He says, after all, Moses is being preached in the synagogues everywhere.
Right.
So he's advocating that these Gentile believers continue to attend synagogue.
So Jesus said that too. He said that in the synagogue, they're reading Moses all the time. So don't do what you see them doing, but do what they tell you is right to do.
But you see, my point is, synagogues were normative places of study, worship for early Christians.
Yes. Yes.
Even to the point where James, who was the leader of the church in Acts chapter 15, advocated that the new believers go out to synagogues.
Yes.
So people like Theo Vaughn and others who are talking about the synagogue of Satan, they are so naive, and I just want to use
they're
stronger
ignorant
words.
as they can
They're
be.
so naive and uneducated biblically that they can say these things, but what's heartbreaking is that they're actually convincing people.
Right. Right.
They're actually
Inconceivable, but
succeeding.
it is happening.
Inconceivable.
Right. Inconceivable.
So it's it's mind-boggling where we are today, and it's troubling, deeply, deeply troubling. So what do you do? Like Frank said, you just continue to hammer away at it. You continue to expose it.
May
It's-
out, right? Little
Me
by
add
little.
slowly, little by little. Listen, so the language that Yeshua used is so revealing. He said, don't listen to them. Don't be affected by them. They are of the synagogue of Satan. Clearly, based on what he said, if there's a synagogue of Satan, there is a synagogue of God.
Right. Right.
Anyway, I find it hard to understand why people can be so narrow-minded. So, like I said on a program a few weeks ago, it comes from a lack of biblical understanding.
Yeah.
People like Theo and Candace and Tucker and Alex and Nick and all these other people that are doing what they're doing, they don't have a solid ground in the Bible. They believe that they have a right to discuss biblical things because they have a platform. if you have a platform, you have every right to share your opinion on the Bible. By the way, most of these people are new converts to Catholicism.
Yeah.
Right.
So that speaks volumes, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
It does.
anyway, so there is this global sort of a universal denial of the legitimacy of Israel. Is it new? No, it's not new. It goes all the way back to Amalek, really. Amalek wanted to blot out Israel from being a nation, prevent God's people from getting to Mount Sinai. That was the point.
Right.
Stop them before they get to Sinai, where God will establish this covenant and reveal the Torah. Stop them, stop them, stop them. So we know who's behind that.
Right.
The
Right.
evil one. But this resistance against Israel, it goes all the way back to Mount Sinai. It has never ceased. It has only continued to exist. Revelation chapter 12 paints a picture of Satan, the dragon, going after the woman, who is Israel.
Right.
And he went after her continuously to destroy her, but the nations, the earth helped her and she was preserved. Well, we live in a time when God now is returning the people of Israel to the land of Israel. So Israel, the woman in that case, is completely exposed. And that's God's plan. God is purposely
Right.
exposing Israel
Right.
to bring the enemies up against Israel.
Right.
So that points to the prospect that we're living in the time of judgment.
To expose them, he has to bring them all back to the land.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that process right before our eyes.
So it's a difficult thing to consider, but God is positioning Israel as bait.
It's awkward, but it's
Awkward.
true.
He's bringing, Ezekiel said that he's going to put a hook into the
Jaw.
of the nations, and he's going to bring them. So
Right.
a hook, bait, Israel is the bait.
Right. Right.
Tough thing to say. I don't think I'll win many friends in Israel by saying that, but he's bringing the nations up against Israel.
Well, I
He's-
think those that live there and are enduring the persecution that
They
they're
understand it,
enduring, they
yeah,
understand it already.
I think the only Jewish people that will have issue with what I just said are people in the diaspora,
Right. Right.
because they don't want to go, but they don't want to be beat.
They
They don't want to be on that
There's
hook.
unfortunately rabbis that are saying to them that you can be an American and not an Israeli.
You can have your
and be
cake
a
and eat
Jew.
it too, right? But the challenge against the legitimacy of Israel is ancient. In the last 10 years, and we've talked about it on this program many times, we've seen the United Nations and other globalist organizations working feverishly to deny the legitimacy of Israel, to make statements like UNESCO, not UNESCO, UNICEF. You know UNESCO.
Yes, yeah.
UNICEF is for the kids, right?
Yes, it is.
UNESCO, what does UNESCO stand for? United Nations Educational, Scientific, whatever. So UNESCO, at least four times,
Big mouthful.
at least four times in the last 10 years, came out making declarative statements that there's no evidence, no archaeological, no historic evidence that the people of Israel ever existed.
And they think they can make a statement like that and everybody's going to believe it, but it's
But the
not.
point is, a lot of people do
A lot
believe
of people
it.
do believe it. It's not true. Not
It's an amazing
not
thing.
1 second is that true.
So, about 180, maybe 200 years ago, the science of archaeology became front and center. Archaeology is a recent science. Archaeology is not something we were doing 300 years ago.
Right.
300 years ago, there wasn't a science of
Right.
archaeology. We didn't care. We saw things and we said, hey, that's nice. You take it, you clean it up, put it on your shelf. So about 180 years ago, this science, what we call the science of archaeology, began. And it was when it was initiated, it was all about validating the Bible. What I'm saying is, when archaeology began as a science, it was solely for verification of the Bible.
Well, and it still is in Israel.
But what happened? All right, so Bible-believing Christians, Protestants, all of them, wanted to find evidence for the Bible because literally there was none. There was no evidence that the narratives of the Bible were actually true, like Noah's Ark, Mount Sinai.
Sure.
All of these things were renewed by faith. We had no evidence. Well, with the advent of archaeology in the last 180 years or so, there's a preponderance of evidence.
Yes.
I mean, just a
Overwhelming how much there
overwhelming,
is.
a pouring out of evidence. And in the midst of that, you have the scholars, academia.
Yes, yes.
Academia that got involved in the whole argument, and their position is, well, we are the ones to determine what is evidence and what is not evidence. Lo and behold, academia and Christian scholarships are directly connected to UNESCO, and they almost work by the governance of UNESCO. You know, in other words, UNESCO, the United Nations, they have governance over even academia. So anything that's discovered, any new evidence, archaeological, biblical, you know, historic, has to pass their approval to begin with.
It's true.
How is that even possible? But over and beyond that, in the last 10 years, since UNESCO has been gunning for Israel, there's been incredible evidences being released, being discovered in the land of Israel. And I can just tell you about them. Absolutely stunning. So it's almost as if God brought to bear the science of archaeology so that the nations of today, UNESCO and all of the nations of today, can have no excuse.
Right.
That's what I began to consider today, that the nations are today doing whatever they can to deny the legitimacy of Israel. All right. God provided all the evidence for them to know and believe and to accept the reality of Israel, yet they continue to deny. On the day of judgment, they will have no excuse, right? They will have no excuse. And that's what I'm seeing. Archaeology is in favor of the people of Israel. It's not in favor of the people of Palestine.
Right.
There's been, with all the archaeology, all of the archaeological finds, there is not one bit of evidence that the land was ever Palestine. None.
None.
It was the land of Israel, Judea, Samaria. Again, the evidence is incredible, all the way up to the New Testament. You know, they discovered, archaeologists discovered Bethsaida.
Right.
The actual
right.
Bethsaida. We were going to go there,
Where?
and we didn't make it. Actual Bethsaida was discovered 10 years ago. They thought they knew where Bethsaida was. It was 3 or 4 miles inland. Couldn't be.
Right.
Because
you knew it was the wrong place.
it was a fishing village.
Wasn't on the water.
And so a couple of years ago, they discovered Bethsaida. But then something else happened. There was a lightning strike that caused a bushfire in the summer months. Caused a bushfire. And there was a patch of bush with some rubble that caught on fire, and when they cleaned it out, they discovered a mural about 2 feet down. They discovered a mural, and on the mural it says, "The House of Simon Peter."
Oh gosh.
A Byzantine find, an ancient Byzantine church that was located on the exact spot. I mean, this stuff is amazing. You can't make this up. So what does that do? It clearly illustrates that God wanted to reveal that this was Bethsaida and this was the house of Peter, where Peter was born. Because according to the tradition, Peter was born in Bethsaida, but then lived in Capernaum,
Right.
a fisherman in Capernaum. Right. So, I mean, that's just one of literal hundreds. I mean, 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, David was a person of myth. He didn't exist. You know, he was an invented character, right?
Right.
Until they found a stele in Dan's stele where it makes clear mention of King David, the house of David. So now you have a stele that's bringing the evidence that, yeah, there was a King David.
Right.
An actual person, a king who reigned in Jerusalem and had sovereignty over the Galil and the Golan and
Yeah.
Lebanon.
Yeah.
So, again, just in the last 10 years, so much incredible evidence. And yet the nations are declaring that there is no legitimacy to Israel. They should not be there. You know the argument, the Ashkenazi Jews are not really Jews. What? Okay, so if that's your argument, and that's 1/3 of the nation of Israel, what about the 2/3 that are Mizrahi and Sephardi? What about them? you got a problem with them as well.
Right.
And so, yeah, they will have a problem with them
They'll
as
come
well.
up with
They'll come
something.
up with something because they're being driven by a spirit. The force that's driving this hatred, this deception and animosity is Amalek. It's a spiritual force.
Yeah.
And people cannot help themselves. So what must we do? And Frank, you alluded to it. We must get up on the mountain. Now,
Right.
you know, Moses, Aaron, and her, get up on the mountain, hold up that staff.
Intercede.
You know, it's not God's will that anyone should perish. Anyone. Even the people that are deceived by Amalek. Even the people that are given over by Amalek. So is it possible that God's staff being lifted up by people like us can set captives free of Amalek? What do you think?
Absolutely.
Have you any family members or friends that are being deceived by Amalek?
Yeah. Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Amalek is at large. So what's necessary is for we Christians to take this time very seriously and get up on that mountain, hold up the staff of God, intercede fervently,
Right.
because there needs to be a breakthrough. Amalek will be defeated. Listen, poor Balaam, you know the story of Balaam. Poor Balaam. I say poor Balaam. Who was Balaam? He was a prophet of God.
Right.
He was a Mesopotamian. He was sent for by Balak, the Moabite king, and he was supposed to curse Israel. Poor guy. Every time he opened his mouth, he could only bless Israel.
Right.
So that happened four times, right?
4 times, yeah.
4 times. The last time it happened, it was as if he said, "That's it. I'm just gonna spew it out." And he said in Numbers chapter 24 at the end there, and he said, "In the end, Amalek will be destroyed." Every word he said concerning Israel was true. That word concerning Amalek was absolutely true. So when Balaam gave that prophecy, he stood on Mount Pisgah, which is near Mount Shittim. He stood on that mountain and he looked at Israel. He beheld the camps of Israel and he prophesied. And he said, "How beautiful are your dwelling places." And then he looked at Amalek. Now, where was Amalek? Amalek was not far off.
Right.
From that mountain, Pisgah, you can look over the valley and see the region of Amalek, which is in the Negev. So he looked at Amalek and he prophesied against Amalek.
Right.
And he said, in the end, Amalek will be destroyed. So it was 40 years earlier that Amalek came against God. And God is speaking through Balaam, making this declaration that
Right.
Amalek will be destroyed. There is your basis for prayer. Get
Yes.
up on the mountain, hold up the staff, and declare the end of Amalek. Amalek is pushing Tucker Carlson, pushing Owens, pushing this entire world
Yeah.
into the valley of decision. This is serious. Listen, we fun about disclosure, right? And when it comes out, it's not going to be so funny, but I muse about it because I know where I came from. I understand the deceptiveness of it. I knew that the Holy Spirit had to put me in a place of making a decision. I was taken to the valley of decision.
Yes.
You're going to serve Eric von Daniken, or are you going to serve me? I knew the exact moment. I was standing next to a water cooler at work and sipping water, and I heard that voice. Are you going to continue to embrace Eric von Daniken, or will you believe me? Instantly, I made a decision. It was done. It was over. But a lot of people are going to be pulled into this. It's going to be about Amalek. This is Amalek. I think the idea of disclosure, multi-dimensional, entities, that's Amalek. That is straightforward Amalek. Because Amalek wants to deceive the world against Israel. So I'm going to say it now. You guys can hold me accountable to it. When this disclosure comes out, and it eventually will, within weeks, it's going to turn against Israel.
Right.
It's going to be Israel's fault. Like the Trade Towers, Mossad took them down. It's always Israel's fault. Somewhere at this very moment, 2 galaxies are colliding. Blame the Mossad. They did it somehow. It's on and on. So, poor Steven Spielberg, right? He's going to bring out this movie promoting disclosure.
I gotta say, if there's a truth.
He's going to be shocked to find out that not long after disclosure comes out, it's going to be Israel.
Right.
It's going to be the Jewish people. And why? Because Amalek has no choice. It's as if, listen, so bear what I'm saying here. It's as if God decided that I am going to bring Amalek to a place where he has no choice but to come against my people. Because God wants to judge Amalek.
Right.
So it's almost as if whatever happens, whatever evil is dispensed into the world, it's always going to be Israel's fault. And that's God's way of bringing Amalek to a complete end. What do you think?
It seems inevitable.
But people should see the truth and repent.
Right.
Can Candace Owen repent of the spirit of Amalek? I think so. We ought to read at least one reference. So in Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 10, and I hope I have it right. Maybe it's 31, verse 10. You can correct me. God makes a statement there that's so incredibly profound, and we ought to read it because it captures the essence of who Israel is and God's love for Israel. Am I correct?
31:10 is, "Hear the word of the Lord, O nations, and declare in the coastlands afar off, and say, He who scattered Israel will gather him, and keep him as a shepherd keeps his flock.
Read 11.
For the Lord has ransomed Jacob, and redeemed him from the hand of him who was stronger than he."
That's Amalek.
Yeah, stronger
So
than
it's
he.
talking
right.
about a time when God will restore Israel, bring Israel back to the land. I love the statement. He who scattered Israel like a shepherd will bring Israel back. Regarded Israel like a shepherd his flock. And that's God speaking. So the nations and UNESCO and all of these globalist entities, even the Council on Foreign Relations, that's vehemently anti-Israel, World Economic Forum, horribly anti-Israel, all of these globalist organizations that are driven by Amalek, they need to hear that. And what did God say? Hear the word of God, O ye nations.
Yes.
Right? Who is he speaking to? He's speaking to the spirit that's governing over the
Right.
nations. Hear the word of the Lord.
The principalities
He who
of a
He
governed
who scattered
district.
Israel
Yeah.
will regard Israel like a shepherd his flock. These personalities need to be very careful. They believe they have security in the newfound Catholic faith, but they do not. Who was it? Corrie ten Boom said that you cannot love God and hate the people of Israel.
Right.
That's what she said. Something along those lines. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
You cannot oppose the Jewish nation, the people of Israel, and say that you're a lover of God. Candace Owen, Christ is King, she makes that declaration with manifest hatred in her eyes towards Israel. But you cannot say Christ is King and earnestly mean it and hate him by hating his people.
Right.
You can't do it. And people buy into this. I have a family member who has taken it hook, line, and sinker. And more people will be pulled into it, people that we know and love. It's an awesome, awesome time to be alive. It's an awesome time for us to get to be functioning as the people that we're supposed to function as.
Right.
To get up on the mountain. The office of Messiah, right? Prophet, priest, and king, we learned that. This is the office of Moses. So when Moses, Aaron, and Hur stood up on that mountain, the three of them holding up that staff is a picture of God's power being exerted upon Amalek. That's what needs to happen. Prayer meetings, prayer groups should be vibrant, should be powerful. There should be people praying in every church specifically for this. In a few minutes, we're going to go do just that. We've been doing it since October 7th. This needs to happen more.
Right.
It needs to happen in every place. People ought to lift up
Right.
that staff.
When you walk your dog in the morning, when you're driving to work, especially if you're driving alone, it's prime opportunity to intercede.
By the way, Amalek is also on the roads. Can't you tell? Amalek is at large on the streets
Ain't
of
that the
Orlando. My
truth?
goodness. People are driving like Amalek. No, it's not. We shouldn't muse this whole thing. It's quite serious.
Right.
Do you know you were talking about Balaam and Balak, and of course, as it relates to Amalek, and you know, Peter, if they needed a New Testament inscription, spoke about it in his second letter. It says here in, what is this, chapter 2 of his second letter.
Good, I know where you're
Chapter
going.
2 of his second letter, it says, they counted as pleasure to revel in the daytime their stains and blemishes, reveling in their deceptions as they carouse with you, having eyes full of adultery that never cease from sin, enticing unstable souls, having a heart trained in greed, accursed children. Forsaking the right way, they have gone astray, having followed the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. But he received a rebuke for his own transgression, for a mute donkey, speaking with the voice of a man, restrained the madness of the prophet. And he continues, it says, they are springs without water, mist driven by a storm, for whom the blackest darkness has been reserved.
Mm-hmm. It's good text because, you know, of course, the early church understood that very well. All right, so we say the synagogue of Satan, and, you know, we fought the Jewish nation, but it's entirely possible that these platforms that are being built everywhere for podcasters like these people are, in fact, the synagogue of Satan.
Right.
Because they're teaching the way of Satan. They're propagating Amalek.
Yeah.
So, for our listeners, we live in an awesome time, awesome in the true sense of the word. Awesome is a word that was used a lot back in the 1960s. Remember that? Everything was awesome.
Yeah.
And awesome meaning good. But we live in a time of awesomeness that's not so good. Awesome meaning we live in an awful time. It's going to be awesome.
Right.
Apart from the concept or the prospect of what we call disclosure, who knows what that really is, we're seeing a perpetual turn against the people of Israel, the Jewish nation, the people of the Bible. And like Corrie ten Boom said herself, you cannot love God and hate the Jewish people. That's a profound, that's an eternal statement. That goes all the way back to the sojourners who came into the camp of Israel, Rahab, and all of those people who joined themselves, Ruth and others who joined themselves to Israel. They knew that salvation would come through Israel. So at this time in history, this is a pivotal time in history, and I think it's the most careful time for us. We ought to be deliberate in where we put our allegiance. Be like Moses, Aaron, and Hur in the office of Messiah, stood up on that mountain, held up that staff. Amalek was defeated, and I believe the same thing is possible today. Today more than ever, that staff needs to be held up. That staff that Moses held up was a picture of God's power. We have that. In Christ, we have that.
Amen. Well, that's our program. We're hosting a special concert program here at the church. Sarah Benedict will be here. She's a songwriter and a recording artist, and her husband is accompanying her, and they will be presenting a program of their music at 7 o'clock on Sunday evening, May 24th. May 24th. So the public is welcome. If this program raises questions in your thinking, and it surely does, we would love for you to share your questions with us. The easiest way for you to do that is to email us at voice@buildupzion.org. Again, voice@buildupzion.org. And until next week, shalom.